everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Male Perspective. I am your host, Lana Reid, and today, on this day, I have the pleasure of sitting down with a gentleman by the name of Yusef Wiley. He's an author, motivational speaker, reentry expert, and prison reform advocate. And I am so excited about listening to the work that he's got going on and portions of his life. But first and foremost, as I always do, sir, I take a quick moment to pause and say thank you to you for making time for me today. Time is a gift. Once you give it, you cannot get it back. And I feel so odd saying that in your situation, but I always do. With that, I want to thank you for making time for me today and welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, and I love what you're doing. I love this space. Thank you.
Well, as we start off today with our time together, our short time together, I was wondering if I could trouble you to share. And for selfish reasons alone, I'm going to admit I'm so proud of your story and your journey. And then, two, society tends to hold this stereotype that once you are a criminal, you're always a criminal, especially when it comes to my brothers. So, for my
Right.
own personal, just thumb my nose up at the public. Could you please share with us, Mr. Wiley, who Mr. Wiley was in his teens versus who Mr. Wiley is today?
Mm. Ooh, that's a big one right there. So as you may be aware of my some of my story, growing up in what we called then South Central Los Angeles. Uh, I grew up in a time in South Central Los Angeles, which they refer to now as South LA, when the gangs was actually on the rise again. The gangs had actually died down, had begun to die down in the early part of the 80s, late
Mhm.
70s and 80s, and then took a turn on an uprise towards 85, 86 and forward. And that was right when I was in my teens. I was in my young uh, junior high, middle school, going into high school by 85, 86. And it was definitely challenging for me, for any young African American boy growing up in the hood, as we say, without a lot of role models and people that we look to as folks that made it. That whole idea of someone that has made it, in our mind, someone that had made it is someone that drives down the street in a lowrider,
Mhm.
right? Or wearing a Turkish robe, gold chains, Gucci sweatsuit, Fila sweatsuit. That was somebody in our minds who had made it.
Mhm.
That wasn't the doctor, that wasn't the dentist, that wasn't the folks that we felt were not us.
Mhm.
So that's what we looked up to. And in the rise of gangs, as a result of that, that culture that came in with the crack epidemic of the 80s, which brought fast money to the Black community in a way that we've never seen it before. Prior to that, there was the angel dust and PCP
Mhm.
and pill popping, which wasn't that nice to look at, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
we saw people thinking they can fly, jumping off of buildings and things like that, that wasn't something that really caught our attention in that way.
Mhm.
But when the crack cocaine epidemic came, it was an opportunity for young people like myself to make money really fast.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so that's what we turned to. It was the older generation initially that was exposed to that, and then later, younger kids, 13, 14, 15 years old, curve serving, as what we call it. Selling crack on the curve or selling cocaine, rocks. We call it. We didn't even say crack. That was an East Coast thing. We said rocks. We didn't call it crack. We called it rocks,
Mhm.
and rock cocaine. And when we saw, man, Bobo and Jimbo got a new lowrider. You see that new
Yeah.
Cadillac with the,
Yes.
that's what we looked up to. That's what we had to look up to.
Mhm.
And many of us in my age generation we were all in athletes. We were all playing sports. We were all basketball players. I was
Yeah.
football and track and field. We were really into sports at that time. In fact, we even played for the LA Sheriff League, which was, imagine that, sheriffs. We played for the LA County Sheriff League. That was the sheriff league that was in our community at the park. You can go and sign your kid up. My father signed me up to play for that league, and I played football for
Mm-hmm.
that league, which had sheriffs as our coaches.
Mm.
You know, as we got older and went into high school, the gang crisis picked up. Now we carrying knives. Those knives quickly turned into guns.
Okay.
And by 87, 86, 87, it was full blown gang banging, gang activity, drive by shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And even in other states, you begin to hear, because of the cocaine, the crack epidemic reaching our shores in California and then extending to other parts of the country, many of the gang members and drug dealers of my era was going to other states and starting the same process of selling
Mm-hmm.
rocks and crack cocaine. And I was caught up right in the middle of all of that was happening. So that's what turned my life around from potentially being a football player for some NFL team or college to being a full blown gang member.
Mm.
Um, because I seen it was a way. And I think people forget how much Hollywood has an influence on
Yes.
kids, right? So when we look at Hollywood and we see shoot 'em up, bang bang, Derringer, Al Capone's, and being glamorized in TV and media, and then we see an opportunity to do this, a similar thing, but with the colors of red and blue as Crips and Bloods in South Central Los Angeles, we seized that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
That was easier. That was much easier than seeing ourselves as a doctor or as a lawyer,
The
because
square peg.
that's not what we was exposed to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then of course the schools didn't make it any better. We didn't really have the best schools. We didn't have the best teachers in the public school system. So that just played another part of that demise, if you would,
Yes.
of
Yeah.
the black male, the black youth that were involved in gangs. And so my career as a thug or a criminal started very young, going to juvenile halls and spending time in juvenile halls and detention camps until I turned 18, and then graduated to the adult system,
Mm.
because I still carried on the life of gangs and
Gang member.
crime. So that's the short version. I
That's
tried to
the
make it
short.
short as
That's
possible,
the
boy.
short part. You
But
mentioned something, and I wasn't even going to talk. Or it wasn't in my mind, but you mentioned that as a youth you played for the sheriff's league, right?
yes.
And a lot of, especially after and I'm going a completely different direction than I wanted to go, but especially after George Floyd, there was this talk
Hmm.
about community policing and what to do or whatever. And
Right.
if I'm understanding, that was a true example of community policing. So was, I guess it was not effective, or
Yeah, I think I would say that the resources were not there, other than the fact that we were playing sports.
okay.
But other resources, when we go and play, I'll give you an example. We'll go and play a game, have a game schedule at another school or another team, and we would notice immediately that they have a bus, they have nice
Um.
uniforms,
Okay.
their uniforms is better than ours.
Okay.
They had all of this stuff, all of this glitter and lights behind them,
Okay.
and even the coaches were dressed nice and had polos and hats, and we like, wow, why we don't look like that? Or we
Okay.
hood, we ghetto. So we
Got
just
you. Got you.
accepted that. We took on that armor like it was a badge, that we
Okay.
was hood, that we was ghetto. That's why we don't have all
Sense
that,
of
right?
identity. Okay.
So that was our identity. We going in to play. We about to smash these guys. Look at them with their pretty uniforms on. Let's get them dirty today.
Mm-hmm.
It was a totally different mentality. It affected our mentality,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
we could not see that greatness in ourselves, that we could be that. right? So we had to turn it around, flip it around, so that we can be okay with it, you
Yeah.
know?
True. Okay, I got you. I got you. Well, we gonna figure something out. My people, we gonna figure
Hmm.
something out. Well, let me move on.
Yes.
Well, let me move on because I got a lot of stuff to pack in here today. So I want to talk about
Yes.
reentry, and
Hmm.
for the general public, that we tend to have two concepts of what reentry looks like, and I think
Right.
some of this has to do with media. So we think sometimes we think, the formerly incarcerated, the gates open and they're released into the arms of some loved one or family,
Right.
and oh, okay, balloons and party and everything is fine. And then there's this
Right.
other version where we believe that the formerly incarcerated is released into a halfway house situation, and they go there
Hmm.
for a certain period of time, and then sis boom bye, they're back in society as hopefully productive citizens. But
Hmm.
here in America, there's something fundamentally broken because we're seeing a lot of our formerly incarcerated transition from
Hmm.
either prison or either halfway houses to homelessness. So
Right.
what's broken there, in that system, that design?
Well, actually, what's broken there is economics, first of all, and what I mean by economics, I'm not just from the sense of us having economics in the Black and brown communities, but in the sense of education about money.
Okay.
Just really understanding how money works and being educated in the use of money
Okay.
and the politics that tends to govern money and things like that. I just think we're so miseducated when it comes down to spending and how to spend.
Mm-hmm.
Just financial literacy overall is a big issue with
Okay.
us and our people. And that was something I began to do during the time I was incarcerated, is educate myself about money, educate myself about business,
Gotcha.
educate myself about not just a job, but a career, right?
Okay.
Because that's another thing. Many of us grew up with parents that were content if we just simply got a job and got out the house at 18, right? You turn 18, go home, go find you a job and move on, right? Get
Mm-hmm.
an apartment, whatever. Versus career. Well, what do you want to be? What do you want to become? And part of that was because many of our parents couldn't afford college education
Mm-hmm.
to send their kids if they wasn't getting a scholarship or anything like that from sports.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a tough thing. That was a way that parents were okay with their children, not going to college, is because they just simply couldn't afford it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've learned during the time myself was incarcerated that here's an opportunity for me to get some free stuff. Let me get this free education. I took advantage of it. I mean,
Yeah.
during the time I was incarcerated, I took full advantage of it, of education, every class I could find, every literacy class I could find,
Yes.
every economic class I could find. I took business courses via correspondences, writing letters, had a little dinosaur typewriter with the old school paper that you, put the paper in, you know, and I got it in. I did my work, did my homework, and sent mailed it back to the school. Um, yeah, I just took advantage of it, and that's a classic example of if somebody has those resources, what they can do and become, right? And I think even to this day, our schools are not equipped with the knowledge that our youth, our young people should be getting. They should be learning economics very young. They should be
Yes.
teaching them how to manage money,
Mm-hmm.
how money, literally how money works. I don't want to just say
True.
economics, but how money works, right?
Yes.
Understanding credit, understanding all these things, right? And that's what's missing in education. That's what's missing in the public school sector.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, especially in ours, and especially
Yes.
in Black and brown communities, communities that are failing, right? Uh, so I learned those things very quickly, and much of it came from simply reading. Simply
Reading.
reading. I began reading. the last straw for me is when I got in trouble when I was in prison. I was in solitary confinement, and that's all I could do was read.
Mm.
So I immediately asked the correctional guards, what books do I have access to? And he came with these novels. I said, man, I don't want to read novels. I don't care about make believe. I said, I need to learn something. I need to put something
Yes.
here, right? Because I'm in a solitary confinement for doing something I had no business. So let me get myself right. Let me get my head on right. I said, I
Mm.
need some books where I can learn something. And I wrote a letter to my parents saying the same thing. I need books. I need books. And my mom's met someone at her job and that also had a loved one that was incarcerated, and she said, "These are the kind of books I'm sending my son." And that's how my book reading. Uh, I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of books over the years that I was incarcerated. I was just
Awesome.
reading.
Awesome.
And that's one of the reasons I named my book "If I Knew Then," because if
If
I
you
knew
knew.
then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have ended up in prison, right? So that's the whole motivation behind the title of my autobiography.
Mhm.
Because when as I was reading, I was just hungry for it. Like I see a book, I was that's how I was a crackhead for books. I was like a
Mm.
bookhead, right? I see somebody walk by me and they have a book, and I'm like, "What's that,
What's
man?
that? What's yeah.
What's that? What's that you reading?" And I wanted it, and that's I became really passionate for reading. So when I went to prison, I was reading at about a third grade level, fourth grade level, and ended up getting into school. And by the time I graduated and got my GED, all that good stuff, I think I was reading at a maybe uh, I think it was 12th grade level, you know. And then I kept going. I just kept going, kept
Mm.
going. So sky's the limit, right?
Yeah.
And where there is no limit in my book at this point, but this is what is not working as far as to answer your question. I know I went on a tangent there,
No,
but
no.
it's just so much wrong with that. And I do see some changes happening now, but that piece is still missing. The economic piece, the financial literacy piece. There needs to be a lot of emphasis on that in the black community, especially.
Yeah,
And
because
there's not enough.
and I don't mean to cut you off because one of the things, whether or not you have um, encounters with law enforcement or incarceration, I think in the Black and Brown community, in many
Hmm.
family systems, we struggle with teaching our children financial.
Hmm.
We don't tell them about this is what it takes to pay the mortgage or the rent. We don't.
Right.
This is how much
Right.
it takes for groceries. We just we're very
Right.
bad at that. And then you were speaking about your parents. Just working parents. I think when the generations shift, our parents don't shift with it. I come from,
Hmm.
working class factory type parents, but they don't
Right.
realize the world is shifting, that I can,
Hmm.
my child can get a career that
Hmm.
fulfills them, so it's some struggles and some dynamics that we as Black and Brown people, we have to evolve. But I see a lot of, well, I'm hoping that I see a lot of evolution and change going on with us now. But let me go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that even the faith community has a role to play in that too, because many of, especially Black folks, depend heavily on the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partly their responsibility as well,
Yes.
similar to the role of the parents, as you say, that shift that needs to happen. That same shift needs to happen with the Black church
Mm-hmm.
as well, and with for any faith community. My faith community is Islamic. I'm from the Muslim faith. I was raised in the Christian faith, but I became Muslim during my time when I was incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
But again, all of those shifts need to happen there, not just in the home with the parents, but also in the faith communities.
Yes,
That
indeed.
same thing needs to happen because they're not going to listen if they go to church on Sunday and the pastor says, "Continue doing it this way," right? you know,
Mm.
so they're not going to listen to anybody outside of the church telling them something different, right? Like you and I. So,
yeah, true, true. That's a good point. And you know, it's so ingrained, especially within the Black community.
hmm,
Some form of faith is deeply rooted in us. So you know, we need to figure out how to
yes,
parlay that into various elements of our world to get optimal incomes, outcomes. Let me say
hmm,
that.
yes,
Let me shift so I can make sure
hmm,
I get into what everything I want to. I want to talk a little bit about prison reform, and which you are
hmm,
an advocate for. And in the United States, depending on what room you're in, everybody is all over the place when it comes to prison
yes,
reform, all over the
right.
place. Um, but it's broken. I mean, we can't. I mean, we just, and since you're in the trenches and you've been in the trenches for so long, for the person who has been under a rock, what actually is
Hmm.
wrong with what's wrong with the prison system? What's broken?
Well, one of the things that's broken is that there's not an investment in intervention
Yeah, okay.
and prevention,
Intervention and
right?
prevention.
So I
Okay.
think that's the start, is that so much is on focus on crime and punishment. There's a totally neglect of intervention and prevention, right?
Okay.
You know, you prevent people from going in the first place, number one, and that's going to come through the resources that I mentioned earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
then, as far as the reform that's needed, once you do actually have a prison, then they have to be set up for people to succeed, not to be better criminals. So that's where they end up failing, is because when they end up in the system, they cater to the culture and politics of criminality. So
Yeah.
the way the system is structured, that blacks over here, Mexicans over
Uh-huh.
here, in many of the prisons, and I'm speaking specifically about California right now. But in any prison, any state, especially in the United States, there's this culture that's allowed to breed inside the prison,
Mm.
which only adds to the criminality of someone making connections. You know how we connect and network in free society with business owners and investors. They connecting and networking with folks that's going to help them commit their next lick when they get out,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the way it's set up. And the correctional guards and the administrators that manage these environments know it exists. They exist, and they exist because they allow it to exist, right? Because that's how they continue to hire new guards in their unions and make more money. When there's an incident and they have guards that have to stay overtime, I mean, the amount of money that's being made just being a
Mm-hmm.
correctional guard, right? So these things, so there's no incentive for them to have reform, because if there's not violence and prison politics and prison culture happening, then there's no job for them,
Gotcha. 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 Gotcha.
right?
Well, speak to that, because I don't think many people understand prison is actually big business. I mean,
Yes, it is.
from the clothing that prisoners wear to the food that they eat to the
Yep.
staffing, as you mentioned. So when it comes
Hmm.
to this greater good of prison reform versus the financial machine that's actually driving it, um, is prison reform even a realistic goal?
It is. And
Okay.
I think it is. And the only reason I say that, because there's research out there that's been done by Stanford. There's research that's been done in Germany and
Okay.
Switzerland and other countries even. In fact, I was a part of a team of folks that went in. We didn't do the traveling, but we actually was a part of the reporting out back to, from a group of district attorneys and public defenders and lawyers that traveled to Germany and other similar European countries to see how they manage their prison system.
Okay.
And I mean, the report was, I mean, it was absolutely incredible.
Okay.
Um, when you see how they manage their prison compared to the United States, where they good behavior in those countries resulted in access to education, access to college, access to going home on the weekend to spend time with your family and coming back on a honor system. There was so many aspects that was there that we can learn from as Americans, that I believe that many people did take a lot of that reform. Some of the
Okay.
reforms, many of the district attorneys, I know at least in the state of California, did take that and
Okay.
accepted that. And we see some of the reforms happening as a result of
Okay.
that, from some of the propositions that's passed over the last 10 years to even the current things that are happening now, where they have access to tablets now. During the time I was incarcerated, we didn't have access to tablets where we can communicate with our loved ones and do courses.
Talking about intervention and prevention, I want to talk about that for a minute, and especially when it comes to the juvenile population, and because
Mm,
that's where you got your start. We have something going on in 2023 across many of the metropolitan cities where we're seeing a rise in this organized retail theft crime, and a lot of those, yeah, a
right.
lot of those are younger people, juvenile people, and I
Yes.
I have a concern. America tends to have this knee jerk reaction to crime. That's how we got the three strikes law, and we were just,
Mm-hmm.
and then we backtracked and said, "Oops, we're sorry, we messed that up." I have a
Mm-hmm.
concern that we will issue out punishments unnecessarily. Uh, when it comes to intervention and it comes to
Mm-hmm.
youth and it comes to crime, what are some options that we can explore instead of just lock them up and throw away the key?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my concerns as well. I seen that when I began to see the smashing grabs and all of this happening from San Francisco, Oakland, down back here to Los Angeles, Southern California, seeing that, I was really concerned about it. And again, there's a little bit, and this is where the breakdown of happens. The breakdown happens because the right people are not communicating. The lawmakers, the service providers, the social scientists, right? They're not communicating in the way that they should be. It's, you have law enforcement on this side saying we need this to do our job. We don't care about what the social scientists saying about criminality, or we just need this over here to do our
Mm-hmm.
job.
Mm-hmm.
We don't care about that part. And then the flip side of that is you have the service providers, the social scientists saying, look, this is the way to deal with that population. This is the way we deal with crime. But no one is listening to each other,
Gotcha, gotcha.
right? And so that creates a void where it leaves the young people now to just do what we see right now, right? Because there's no solutions. There's nothing being brought to the table to say, hey, let's try this out. Let's make an
Okay.
attempt to resolve something. Um, if I'm driving home every week and I'm driving home and I'm seeing the same thing, right? And then I turn on the TV and I see other people live in a certain type of way. Then of course, for a young person that doesn't really understand what's happening, they only assume that, okay, the haves and the have nots. So I'm gonna just go take. You see?
Mm-hmm.
That's the mentality. That's the mentality I once had as a young person. So I get it. I understand it. And until we resolve that, we're going to continue to have this problem with our young people.
Haves and have nots. Okay, so we got to get some more, I guess, economic stability into
Yeah,
to the
basic stuff.
neighborhoods.
Like me and one of my colleagues, whenever we go, because we in the hood, we be in the hood still,
Mhm.
right? We're going to help our folks, go do some intervention, whatever we're doing. And every time we drive on certain parts of the neighborhood, my colleague always say, man, when they gonna put some paint on these walls? When they gonna fix that fence? When they gonna clean these streets? When they gonna, they just totally neglect our
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing like that is happening there. So it draws you, drains you, and pulls you down. Just the sight of it pulls
Yeah.
you down, and it makes your behavior. I mean, this stuff been studied.
Yes.
You see the lack of trees, the color lack of color. This is scientific fact that it has an impact on your psychology and how
Mm-hmm.
you behave, your anxiety, your
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence. All of these things impact that.
Yeah.
So when we're not paying attention to that, our children are being raised in it, right? What they expect.
Yeah, I think to your point, there was a study, I want to say it was almost 10 years ago. Um, they did a study in the projects, some of the Los Angeles projects, and studied the
Hmm.
children. And the large majority of the children were struggling with PTSD, just as
Yes,
soldiers were in
right. Exactly. I remember
yeah,
that.
after and because just getting in and out of their house on a day-to-day basis was as emotionally psychologically stressful as a soldier in war. So I mean, there's the dynamics that we have to really come to terms with when it comes to our inner city kids, and providing optimal outcomes with them. And we have to really understand just the day-to-day survival mode that they are in, and how that changes how they navigate this world.
I'll give you another example, and I've done this plenty of times, because I've have so many people I've helped over the years, right? And I've watched people come from criminality and crime and being a thug to, being very upstanding human beings, married, homes, doing well. And one of the things I do, like for all of my guys, mostly that I work with, that's getting out of prison. We have these talks or these sit downs with them when they first get home. And one of the things I always emphasize the financial literacy. I talk to them about creating a portfolio. That's the first thing I talk to them about. And I give them like goals that they can start setting. It changed the trajectory on how they process
Mm-hmm.
their life going forward. It
Mm-hmm.
literally changes it. Their goals totally change from, oh, I just need to get out, get off parole, go to work every day, pay my bills, go home, go to sleep, buy groceries, go back to work. No, it's not that. That's not what it is. That's not what you should be doing. That's going to stress you out. All
Yeah.
right. Let me show you something different. And when I break it down to them, I talk to them about everything from investing to
Awesome.
learning how to create profiles on LinkedIn
Awesome.
to how to build dynamic resumes, how to do trades on the side, how they can make passive income. I'm
Awesome.
showing them all of these things, and they're like, "Wow, man, all of this is out here. I can
Awesome.
literally do all of this."
Awesome.
And it just literally changes. They don't want to be sidetracked now. They literally
Mm-hmm.
don't want to hear nothing else. They don't want to talk to the homies. They ain't trying to hear what the homies talking about because now they see. And
Mm-hmm.
in the way I talk to them, I say, this is how the rich live. This is how the wealthy stays 10 steps ahead of us. This is how the rich continues to be rich. I'm educating them about how they've been hoodwinked, how they've been played to think that it's this way and that
Mm-hmm.
way, being in debt and all these things. Bad debt, because not all debt is bad, but
That's
being
right.
in bad debt, right? And I'm educating them about it. Every chance I get when I'm at the sites visiting returning citizens that's coming home, I'm talking to them about this stuff and they love it. They
Awesome.
literally love it.
Awesome. 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 Yeah,
So,
I think a lot of people don't understand that um in some sort of way. I mean, and people see it in your direction, but in some sort of way, there's a genius in a criminal mind that if you direct
mm-hmm,
it in a certain path, I mean, there's an
mm-hmm,
entrepreneurial mindset to
yep,
it. There's
yep,
you just have to direct that path. And a lot of people tend to want to
absolutely.
just wash their hands of it. But the thought process is very genius, and can be
Yes, it is.
and can create some very phenomenal outcomes if you just change the direction, change the mindset, put some books in some hand, put some training and some
Right.
education, uh, you know, to show that you don't have to get on this hamster wheel of get a job,
Mm-hmm,
but
mm-hmm,
hey, let's create some financial padding, get some investments, like you said,
mm-hmm,
get the portfolio. But in
mm-hmm.
the urban communities, we're just never taught that on a widespread
Mm-mm.
level. So I
No.
Let me shift to, because I got
Mhm.
one more thing I want to talk about before I let you go. And you started a nonprofit, and
Yes.
this is my, I love to give my thumb my nose at folks. You started a nonprofit while you were still incarcerated, correct?
Yes. That's where the building, the bricks started. Yes.
Tell us about this nonprofit, please.
Yes, absolutely. So it started in 2005. I was kind of pushed out there by, fellow inmates and people that watched me and the chaplains, and was like, "They, man, you got a gift for workshops, for doing workshops and helping people, just really talking to people, right?" And I said, "Oh yeah, okay." And one of the chaplains said, it was a whiteboard in the distance from where we were sitting. And he said, "Man, take this." He gave me a marker. He gave me one of these and said, "Go over there, man." And all that he was just telling them guys over there, just show them on the board. And that was the first time I ever did that. And so I went over there to the board and I started talking about some of the same things that we kind of alluded to and talked about here about financial literacy and things of that sort, and why we haven't made it out of the hood, or why the hood is still the hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put it all on the board. I just literally started putting it in, and he just sat back and watched me and was like, "Man, this guy, is gonna be, something." And I, at the time, I probably wasn't no more than 28 years old, maybe. I was about 28 at the time. Maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years into my incarceration. So I probably was younger. I was actually probably about 26,
Okay.
27. And from there, I said, okay, okay. So as my journey continued through the prison system, moving from different facilities and getting moved to a new prison or whatever, due to security reasons and things like that, uh, I continued. I kept going, and I would invite people. I said, "Hey, I'm doing a workshop, man. I'm going to be talking about such and such." And they go, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And I tell them what it is, and they're like, "Oh, cool. Where is it?" I said, they be wondering where I'm getting it from, and I'm like, "I
Mm-hmm.
created it myself. I actually created the workshop myself, right?" And they're like, "You just came up with that on your own?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I came up with my own." So the first very workshop I created was called SAFE,
Okay.
and it's an acronym for staying out of prison, addressing addiction, families in crisis, and earning a legitimate living.
Okay.
So that's what the acronym SAFE was for. So from there, the organization was built because I continued to create these modules, if you would, uh, and getting all the inmates to come into the chapel, and then that we ran out of space there, and ended up having to go to the cafeteria, and then
Okay.
from the cafeteria to the gymnasium. It just grew and grew and grew, and the administration was like, "Wow, okay." He's
Great.
keeping the
Great.
peace on the yard, right? And then they made an attempt to steal my idea, the administration of the prison. And so I got on the phone, got a phone call with my dad. I said, "Pops, they trying to steal my ideas, Pops." And he said, "Man, we gonna deal with that." So I ended up getting a notary public that actually worked at the library at the prison to document my stuff and send it to my dad, and that's how I was able to protect it until I got out of prison. And then somebody was ready and waiting to print it all out for me and proofread it and edit and all that good stuff. And folks from the Silicon Valley community up in the Bay Area heard about me, heard my story from guys getting out of prison before me talking about me. And so I
Awesome.
had a reputation for helping individuals that got out of prison and became upstanding human beings. And they wanted to meet me. And so one of the guys from the Silicon Valley community wrote a check the first day he met me and said, "Look, we need to get this idea as a 501c3."
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up with a lawyer, a nonprofit attorney that processed all my documents to get my 501c3 status and everything, my 1023s, all that good stuff. And by 2013, we were a 501c3, and it took some time to kind of build some momentum. And eventually, the city that I lived in at the time uh, brought me in as a commissioner, and
Okay.
then to address youth violence intervention. And That was successful. I literally was able to get them to get a local tax going where they was able to pay for everything through a local tax through the city. And they gave me a free office as a result.
Okay.
I had a free, I didn't have to pay any rent for the office space. Um, and I actually was hired at a private school to teach African American studies. And I did that for 2 years while I was building my nonprofit up. And then the board finally said, "Hey, man, we raised enough money to let you. We need you to be doing that full time."
Full time. Yeah.
And that's how I broke away about 2015, 16, and became the full time executive director of the organization. We were about 8 employees at the time. Now we had about 118 employees. So 5 million annual budget.
Great, great. Listening to you talk, your story poses a question that society is always struggling with,
Mm.
and maybe you can answer. Why is it that you found a successful path, and so many times we see people going back again and again and again and again? What's the difference?
The difference is you, and I think it come boils down to you being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like if you realize, and I think everybody feels this way, like I don't want to be over here selling drugs, or I don't want to be over here gang banging. I don't think anybody really wants to do that, but they don't know how to make that lifestyle change. And if they do see a path to make that lifestyle change, who's going to pay for it? Who's
Mm,
going to sponsor it? Who's going to
okay.
fund it? Right? And that's the key. And for me, I knew the first step to me being able to sponsor my own success is not going back to the hood. So that was the first thing I didn't do when I got out of prison, is go back to the hood. My
Okay.
family came to see me in the Bay Area, in the Silicon
Okay.
Valley.
Okay.
So I paroled there. Well, I seen the opportunities, I seen the resources, I seen the support from the community, seeing my vision being developed, and that's
Okay.
where I paroled to. So really, that's what it comes down to: knowing that, hey, I need this lifestyle change, but how do I get it? Who's going to sponsor it? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to give me the resources? Who's going to shield me? Who's going to place that umbrella over me so that I can have enough time? That's why reentry is so successful,
Okay.
because like our housing facilities are designed to support individuals like that don't have money to pay rent.
Okay. Okay. So
So the
they
government
don't
are
have like a
funding it.
family. So who don't have like a family support system, or
They may have that, but it might present triggers for them. If they get
okay.
back out and go back to their family,
Okay, got you.
Uncle Joe's still smoking weed and
Got you. Okay.
drinking all night, and waking up the family, coming through the
Got you.
house tripping, and that those are triggers for people to go back to their old ways.
Okay.
So many a times there's people that go into transitional housing because that's the better route versus going back to their old communities. I
Okay.
knew it was for me because I was a gang member. So it was definitely better for me to go to a whole different community. But to your point, everybody doesn't have the ability to do that. And that's one of the problems. That's why these resources that we have, organizations like ours, provide that out.
Got you.
They provide that out because they're going to be likely moving in a community that they wasn't raised in at this transitional facility,
Okay.
right? And that's going to give them a break, a clean break. To, in some cases, they might be close by, down the street, maybe across the community here, or maybe on the other side of town. But it's that fresh start in the environment that's not theirs. That
Hmm.
they're not waking up in the morning to their sister walking through, talking
Got you.
crazy to them, talking smack, but another group of men that are on the same trajectory of doing something better for themselves,
Okay.
right?
Got
So that 6 months or a year that they get of free housing to save their money, get job, do school. Most of them doing both. You have them doing a school at night or something, and they're taking a little job during the day, and they're able to save that money so that when they do make that transition, and some of them transition into married life. We had a few where they transitioned out of that house into married life
you.
with a job. and transportation
Gotta
and half of
love
that
them.
mortgage or rent that they about to pay, right?
That's right.
If
That's
if
right.
there's a partnership like that, right? Um, so that gives you a sense of why these programs are so valuable.
Okay.
If it's not there, the community is really uh, in a bad place.
Gotcha,
Without them. So we can only safe net so many people. I like calling it that safe net, or safe landing, or safety net, if you
okay.
would, for people.
Make it very real for people to understand. In California, when somebody is released from the prison system,
Hmm.
generally is a bus ticket and how much money they're given.
$200.
And you're supposed to make life happen with a bus ticket and $200.
Yeah. Now, in some cases, there's individuals that during the time they was in there, they were smart and they were saving money from prison jobs. Now, it depends on the type of prison job they had. Most prison jobs pay 18 cents an hour. And just imagine, right? 18 cents an hour. You've been saving that for 20 years, 10 years. That's not no money. But, the biggest checks I've seen someone come out of prison with was maybe $3,500, plus the $200 that they're going to get anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's going to be gone in clothes and hygiene, and just trying to get a ticket home and things like that, right? That's money's going to go really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the people that fall in my hand, I'm taking them straight to get a bank account. Once they get their ID, I tell them to hold that money. Wait till you get an ID. Once you get your ID, get your bank account. Preferably in the beginning, a credit union, where you don't have to pay the taxes and things on your own money. And we have a process, and it works. And we have someone that's just recently came to us that just served 40 years in prison. He was a kid when he went to prison. He was like 17, 18 years old when he went to prison, and he's almost 60. He did
Oh,
40 years in prison, and he's literally lost in free
I would
society.
imagine. I would imagine.
But we're working with him. It's enough of us that got our arms around him and spending time with him daily, so that he can survive, so that he doesn't feel institutionalized. Because that's when you find the institutionalization is there, and you just hate to see them revert back to that when it gets too hard. When they say, "Oh man, it's really hard out here," and
Mm-hmm.
that's when they start feeling like, you know what, I did better inside.
Yeah, let me go back to what I know. It's
Yeah.
that scene in Shawshank Redemption when
Shawshank Redemption.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yep.
it's
Is
a classic
absolutely the
scene.
truth.
Mm-mm. One of the things I want to spotlight and make everybody aware of with your nonprofit is you have a program, and I wrote down here, community peer ambassadors. And
Yes.
one of the things I was reading, and I want to make sure everybody knows, is you have a 0% recidivism rate. What do you attribute to that?
Well, I guess the blueprint. I
Okay.
like pride myself on saying that, we have the blueprint to keeping people from going back to prison, right? So that's definitely attributed to the fact that when we receive folks, we really receive them, and we take them
Mm-hmm.
in, and we have a process. They see us and they face weekly, and it's not like a
Wow.
prison guard or like a police. It's like a brother. It's like a peer.
Okay.
That's why we use the terminology peers for a lot of things. Our members, we treat people as one of us,
Okay.
right? Not that you're down here because you just got out of prison, so we're gonna treat you down here.
Okay. Got you.
No, we
Got
let them know that, look, we're going to help you get ahead. We're going to help you to build. We're going to help you. What do you want to do? I know you got some talent. That's literally how we talk to folks
you.
that
Okay.
come our way. Like, I know you got some skills. Didn't you used to build, stuff for people in prison? You used to be the one sewing. We bring it out. We
Everybody
find
needs a
ways.
hype man. Everybody needs a hype man.
Right. And so we find ways to bring that out of folks, and we do it every time, and you find people becoming all type of stuff, whether it's
Awesome.
everything from car detailing businesses to streets cleaning, the shampoo, washing street,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
many stories like that within the people that's passed through our organization. Or they work for us right now and they've grown from entry level to, I have a few that's like director level, case managers and things of that
Mm,
nature.
okay.
Yeah. So that's how we have a 0% recidivism, because we literally um, hold them by the hand initially and then build them up, show them how they can grow and be builded up,
Okay.
right? Not that old stuff, not just get a job, get on the rat race and come back home and be stressed out,
Okay.
but literally how to do it right. And we actually focus a lot on relationships as a part of that as well, because we noticed early that relationships have a lot to do with recidivism,
You got to be
because they
connected.
get out and hook up with old flames or whatever the case may be, that it doesn't work out. It was something toxic there, and you already knew that, but your desire said otherwise, and you got caught up. And those are the cases where folks have gone back into the system. That's come through us. Our citizenship is not 0 0, but it's like 0.1 maybe, or something,
Mhm.
0.2. It's
Still
very low.
impressive. Still
It's
impressive.
very low. But I guarantee that the ones that did go back in the last 10 years had something to do with a relationship,
Hmm.
whether it was a bad relationship they had with a family member, or a bad relationship they had with a spouse.
Okay.
Guaranteed it has something to do with that.
Yeah.
So we made a link between that process. So even in our hiring process as an organization, we ask people, do they have relationship issues when we hire them? We don't
Okay.
just ask them, do they have debts and or homies that might come looking for them because they owe them or they snitched on
Got
somebody from
you.
back in the day.
Got you.
See,
Got
we have
you.
a different process. See, people think they know this work, but that is
Got
the work right
you.
there.
Got
You
you.
see,
Okay.
we really ask those type of questions
Got
that
you.
the application don't typically ask, right?
That's going to make a
And from
successful.
that, we're able to better guide and mentor them based on that knowledge. You
Got you.
see,
See. I
and that's
see.
how they do well, end up
Awesome.
doing well.
Awesome. I like that. I like that. Well, let me wrap this up, I guess, because I see I got more questions, but
Mhm.
I don't have more time. But I do want to ask you this, and I want to shift directions a little bit, and ask you if you could give some encouragement to the parents, because as I was
Yeah.
reading the blurb on your book, hold it up for me
Hmm.
one more time so everybody can see.
Hmm. Yeah.
As I was reading the blurb on If I Knew Then, you wrote that you came from a two-parent household, and you mentioned that,
Yeah.
and working parents, right?
Yeah.
And I think you own up to the fact that your life path was because of your personal choices, nothing of
Yeah.
what your parents
Right.
did.
Right.
So here we are in 2023, and we have parents, be they two-parent homes or single-parent homes, and
Yeah.
they're sending their kids out into this world with social media, regular media,
Hmm.
peer pressure, conflict resolution skills,
Yeah.
opiate fentanyl crisis. What encouragement would you give to parents, or what guidance would you give them on minimizing involvement in gang, street life? Or I mean, it's a different world out there. What encouragement would you give to parents? I don't
Absolutely.
even know if you're a parent yourself, so I'm just
Yeah, I am a parent, and
okay.
I'm a parent. I have 5 kids, 6 kids, and 13 grandchildren. So,
Awesome, granddaddy
yeah,
Wiley.
yep. So the encouragement though would actually be it really comes to, because I know it can be tougher even in two-parent homes if both parents work a lot and they're not able to really monitor the activity and behavior of their children. But I think they definitely need to recognize though that they're there. They have to spend time with them and know that they're there.
Okay.
Um, the relationship that they have with their children, it shouldn't be a homeboy or I'm trying to be cool or we get trying to be friends. That's a big mistake that I've seen with
Mm,
parenting, is
okay.
that they just want to be friends with
Hmm.
their kids, and that's a huge mistake.
Hmm.
There has to be first respect. They have to get that respect and earn that respect from their children in a way that our parents were with us, the old school way. But this is where they can really be effective, is they have to know and understand and value what goals that they may have for life.
Okay.
I think uh, entrepreneurship is underestimated
Yes.
and it's underrated. And I think that's something that seed need to be planted by the parents.
Hmm.
That it's not just about going and getting a job and working for this company, but it's also doing both. Maybe do the job, but work
Until,
towards this at the
yeah.
same time. Because you may get tired of that job. If you don't love that job and feel passionate about that job, you might not stay very long. So, what do you want to do?
Hmm.
What are you good at? What are your skill sets? What are some of the skills you may want to develop because you just like it? You've seen something on TV and you say, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to be that." What is it? And then whatever that is, help them to get there. And if you can't help them personally to get there, find a mentor for them.
Oh, yeah, a resource.
Mentorships is another underestimated, underrated
Oh, yes.
tool that parents can be using for their kids. So enrolling them in some kind of mentorship program, getting them involved with working with mentors, those are very effective. In
Awesome.
fact, the
Awesome
research
tip.
proves it. So
Awesome tips. Awesome tips. Yeah, it's a whole different world, whole different world. And
yeah.
going back to, the different the older generation, the old school generation, they could work that 9 to 5 and achieve
Hmm.
achieve the American dream and buy a home or whatever. But today, it's taking a different kind of financial mindset, an
Oh
entrepreneurial
yeah.
mindset to buy houses, put your kids through college, or
Oh
have
yeah.
those things. So
Different mind, definitely.
different world, different world. Well, sir, I want to ask you my random question, and then I'm going to ask you to tell us how we pick up the book, how we, connect with you to possibly have you speak to our kids or our adults, or if we have
Yeah.
a, a group of people that we want to talk to, or maybe we have, or how we get people into the housing program. Just we're going to ask you all of that. But
Okay.
it's a 6 month or a year program housing offer.
Yeah, in some cases we've had people longer than that. Like some of the folks that work for us, they've been with us 4 years, 3, 4 years,
Yeah,
because
because
they
that
work for us and they content, and that's it.
because because my concern is California, rent ain't cheap. So I was like, and especially when you have it's hard to get an apartment with when it comes to background checks. But California
Mhm.
is one of the more progressive states when it
Yes,
comes to criminal reform. So
yes.
we're kind of spoiled. All right, so let me ask my question here. So let's see what we got. Oh, let me cross my fingers here. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Mm, good one. I actually wanted to be a football player.
Player. Okay. What high school you go to?
I went to Centennial High School in Compton.
Oh, okay, okay. That's Compton. Most people don't know Compton had three high schools,
Yes,
three high
Dominguez,
schools.
Compton High School, and Centennial. Yep.
Okay, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Wanted to be a football player. Okay.
Yep. And I was pretty good at it. I mean, before the gangs took over. So
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome. Centennial. Which street? What street is that
the
on?
El Segundo and
El
Central.
Segundo, El Segundo Central. Okay, I get them all
Hmm.
confused. I get them all twisted around. Alrighty, so tell us how we pick up the book, how we connect with you, and all of that stuff.
The easiest way to connect with me, I would say that first is my website is pretty simple, and it links to all of my other stuff that I'm doing, the organization, et cetera. That's the easiest way. So that would be ywspeaks.com. Very short, simple, ywspeaks.com. That's it. And you find me, you find the stuff that I'm doing, and you can book speaking engagements, me as a panelist, as a speaker, as a motivational speaker, a presenter of any sort. And also, you know, I'm actually have a speaking engagement coming up in Dallas. I'm gonna be going to Dallas. It's a youth program, youth
Okay.
organization. I'm going to be speaking at a big event that they're doing at the Hilton there. So a lot of people like using me for various things, various
Okay.
venues. I would suggest that as well as any kind of mentorship programs that they're looking to get their kids in.
Awesome.
As far as the book you can find the book on Amazon. So just go. The easiest way to find it, of course, would be the title, If I Knew Then, by Yusef Wiley. I kept Andre in my name because that's the name my mama gave me. So,
You gotta respect
people
mama.
call
You
me
gotta
Yusef.
respect mama.
And I know she kind of looked at me strange when I said, people call me Yusef now, moms, and she said, "Well, I still call you Andre."
That's black
I can
mama.
still call you Andre, right? I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, that's cool." So that's when I started using Yusef Wiley. So I got two first names.
Yeah.
And
Them black mamas. I used to change your diet, call you Andre. That's what I'm gonna call
yeah,
you.
yeah, that's it. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you continue with your podcast, and I appreciate having me and the folks out there that's listening. I mean, if you want support and you want to support loved ones, or if you've been impacted by incarceration, of loved one incarcerated, we're definitely here to support individuals and families like that. So
Awesome. Well, I so appreciate and admire the work that you are doing. I admire
mhm.
you for your personal journey. I admire you for the example you set. I feel sorry for. I didn't know you were a grandfather. I feel sorry for the grandbabies. They can't even get in trouble at school without be like, oh God, granddaddy. Here
Yeah,
come granddaddy.
yeah, 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 definitely.
We're not gonna
Yeah.
have no repeats. We're not gonna have, but
You can't do that. Yeah.
no, no. So I just applaud you on the work that you are doing.
And all of my older kids, since I've been out of prison, went back to school.
There you go.
All of them, every last one of them.
There you go. There you go. I like
So
it. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
yeah.
And there's a Mrs. floating around too, right?
Yes, yeah,
There's a
my
Mrs.
wife.
Wiley.
Yeah,
Okay. Behind every
yeah,
good
she's the
man is
tough
a
one.
good.
She's the tough one. So
Got you, baby.
she
All
don't
right.
play. Yeah,
That's right. That's right. You
yeah,
talked about relationships and how that plays a part in success. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
If you know you
absolutely.
have somebody you can kind of like today was a rough day, I was
Yeah,
kind of, thinking
yeah.
about whether or not I should, but you've got that cheerleader on your side saying, hey, we can do this. So that
Hmm.
that's all plays a part. But anyways, let me go on. Well, sir, I appreciate you and the time that you gave, the information you shared, what you are doing in the community. I applaud you from little old me. I appreciate you and wish you nothing but the
Appreciate
best.
you.
Okay,
Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Okay, and
that's
have a great rest of your evening.
that is all for this week's episode of Male Perspective. I'm your host, Lana Reid, and I will see everybody next time.